Sometimes we're not avoiding life because we don't care. We're avoiding exposure because we care so much that we stop participating in life. Hiding feels safer than living, and that protection can quietly become a prison. We lie to ourselves, but not on purpose. We think that we are struggling with motivation, discipline, willpower, consistency, laziness, procrastination. But maybe that's not what's happening. Protection and healing can start to look identical from the outside. For me, my healing journey began as a physical one. My body was struggling, to say the least. My cage became my couch. My body felt safe there. I certainly couldn't cause myself more physical harm there, right? If I could wrap my anxiety into one statement, it would be this. The couch asks nothing of me. The world does. And maybe that's what emotional self-protection really is. Not laziness, not lack of motivation, not lack of discipline. Safety, protection. For me, through undiagnosed Lyme disease, a crushed foot that shortened my leg by 2.5 inches, a bad back, torn Achilles, to name a few, my nervous system learned that movement could most definitely lead to pain. Through empty relationships, it learned that visibility could lead to rejection. Effort can still end in loneliness. Healing your body does not guarantee being loved. My pain slowly turned any semblance of safety into a need for relief. Relief turned into numbness. I became a blackout drunk who binge ate her feelings. Numbness turned into predictability. And predictability turned into an emotional shelter that asked nothing of me except to stay hidden. And here's the truth for me right now. It's hard for me to admit, but I know I'm not alone, so I'm going to name it. I believe my body already knows that getting healthier could make my longing louder. Longing for something and fearing that you still won't receive it after all the work you're doing is deeply human. And that fear keeps me stuck at times. The current energy is a Gemini sun and a Capricorn full moon. It's coming up. Gemini doesn't just nurture, it protects. Its energy is about creating safety. Its shadow side is retreating into a shell when life no longer feels safe. The Capricorn full moon asks us to participate in life. Too much Capricorn and we force ourselves beyond our capacity. Force versus choice removes safety, but we need both. We need protection, but we also want connection. We need safety, but we also crave participation. Healing asks us to build enough safety to slowly step back into life. And not because we're fearless, but because we're becoming resourced enough to live. I need to feel safe and I need to show up. But I can't fully show up if I don't feel safe. So the question became, how do I create enough safety to re-engage with life? One way I approach feeling stuck is to reflect on how I show up when I don't feel safe. Do I push through? Do I hide? Do I numb? Do I overwork? Do I disappear? Do I convince myself that I am lazy? What about you? Maybe you aren't lacking discipline. Maybe you just don't feel safe enough to move yet. And maybe that's the question this full moon is illuminating. Where do I still feel unsafe? Where am I protecting myself? And what is that protection costing me? The challenge is that many of us don't even know what safety feels like anymore. We have spent so much time surviving that calm feels unfamiliar. Safety doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels like unclenching your jaw, taking a deeper breath, speaking without rehearsing every word, letting yourself exist without constantly preparing for something to go wrong. The goal isn't to force ourselves out of protection. It's to slowly teach the body that participation in life can feel safe again. Emotional self-protection can slowly become a way of hiding from life itself. The necessary shift is from emotional reactivity to body awareness. But for now, just notice. Notice where you feel most alive. Notice where you feel safe. Notice the places that you disappear, that make you shrink. Notice what feels supportive and what merely feels familiar. Healing begins there, not with fixing, not with forcing, just noticing, just witnessing yourself. Have you ever realized you weren't avoiding life? You were protecting yourself.